If you're going through like a divorce right now, I think making space to grieve is really important, and acknowledging that sometimes grieving can come out where you're in this victim space, like, woe is me. And sometimes grieving can come out where you're in this space where you're like, screw them. That is normal. And I think letting yourself move through all of that is wonderful.
Welcome to The Details with Allison Kahler, a space for real divorce stories and grounded conversations with experts, helping you find clarity and courage as you step into a future that may look different than you expected and better than you thought possible. My guest today is Shelly Stover. Shelly is a licensed marriage and family therapist based in Los Angeles, and she works with individuals and couples who are navigating major life transitions. Often that includes relationship challenges, breakups, and divorce. Today, we talk about attachment theory. So if you've ever wondered if you might be anxious, avoidant, disorganized, or secure, we answer all of that today. And we also talk about the role of grief in divorce, something that often gets overlooked. Let's get into my conversation with Shelly. Welcome to The Details, Shelly.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Well, to get started, can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do and the clients that you serve?
Yeah, I can. So I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I work primarily with couples and moms and people who are grieving. So sometimes that is people who are going through breakups. And sometimes it's also like in relationship to couples, people come into breakup or go through the divorce process or turn into co-parents. And sometimes it's also just people figuring out to come together. And that happens as well.
Amazing. And what are you most passionate about as you work with your clients on these topics?
I think I get really passionate about people owning themselves in a relationship and finding ways of kind of being more expansive in front of another person. And so sometimes that's happening on an individual level. Sometimes that's happening with couples. You're kind of seeing it right there in the room. Yeah. And when people are working that hard on bringing more of themselves into their life, it's like just nothing more than an honor to sit there. I can't believe that's like my work. I get to sit there and like, I treasure it. Yeah.
Oh. That's amazing. And I'm sure as we get into it, you can share a little bit, obviously not with the specifics, but some of those client breakthroughs and like when they have those aha light bulb moments that go off. So excited to dig into that. One of the things that you and I talked about when we first met was the concept of attachment theory and how that shows up in marriage and relationships. And so can you start by just telling us a little bit about attachment theory for those that aren't aware?
Yeah, it's a huge topic. It's hard to condense it down. And everybody is so unique and so individual. And on some level, what you're really looking at is how does somebody want to get their needs met? How does somebody work on getting their needs met in a relationship and what happens there? It's also kind of your nervous system though, too. If you're talking about attachment, you're talking about someone's nervous system and how regulated they are by themselves or with another person. And you're kind of tracking that and you're working with people inside of all of that. What's interesting in pop psychology today is like, in relationship space, people are talking about, oh, you're this, or, oh, you were that, and oh, he's so avoidant, and oh, she's so anxious.
Yeah.
And kind of have these like groupings. And in my opinion, I think it's so just like it's way more colored than that. Sometimes people talk about attachment as a strategy. And that makes more sense to me because you can be in a dynamic with a person and maybe you lean in a certain direction, but then in this other relationship, you lean in a different direction. And that is relational. So it's really important. You're never really in a box with it. It's more of like a whole tapestry. But there are sort of these like main categories, right? You've got like anxious, which is someone who's like, oh, where are you? Are you there? And then someone who's more maybe in an avoidant who kind of withdraws and they're pulled in. And then you have disorganized, which is both. And that's in a really like basic form. And then you have secure attached is like they're cool with who they're cool with, you know.
That's what we all aspire to be as the secure ones, right?
Yeah, and I've read different things saying like, oh, the majority of people are securely attached. And then you see other things, it's like, no, it's like 50%. And that's why I say, like, I really think it's like individual. Sometimes you can work with individuals and it happens too. Depends on where
Hmm.
people are and what they're coming in with. But relationally, it's just butter. Like it's all right there. And sometimes they go through some of that and they're like, I don't want this.
Yeah.
I'm watching this and it's not actually really what I want. I was kind of stuck in this pattern over here and that's
Yeah.
not really what I want. And that is okay. When you reach a breakup from that, it's a very conscious breakup. It's a very,
Mm.
deliberate divorce or separation. And it's known because, you can choose what it is you're kind of wanting to like deal with in a relationship or not. And when you get to
Yeah.
see it in front of you, you really get to kind of choose. And everybody has their own capacity for what they can meet in that. And sometimes couples therapy is like seeing what the capacity is in
Yeah.
each person and then choosing to love and stay in it, or choosing to love maybe, or just choosing to leave. And
Yeah.
again, very deliberate.
I think what I'm taking away from that is it's less about I, Allison, am labeled one of these types. It's that how am I showing up in relation to the person across from me? And that might be different based on the dynamic of the relationship. Is that right?
That's how yeah, based on
Yeah.
how your needs are being met, how you're communicating those needs, how the other person's attuning to you, if there's like a sense of maybe protection there, if there's what safety and security looks like to you. But at the same time, you grew up with like your own parents missing your own needs. And I don't think there's one person who had all of their needs met by their parents. I just don't
Right.
think it's possible. You would have to have 1,000 people being your parent to have all of your needs met.
Yeah.
So there's holes there. And you may have a partner that's meeting some of them, but gosh, this thing that, oh, it's kind of bringing some of that up. And how you then communicate when that kind of stuff is being brought up is really kind of where it comes down to. Because some people are, I'm not getting this right. And some people are
Yeah.
like, I'm just going to go and take care of myself. And
Right.
you're hitting different patterns inside of all of that. I think it's so individual.
Given that a lot of that comes from things that we picked up based on unmet needs from parents, as you said, or just things that we picked up as individuals growing up, how much of this work in relationships is on the relationship dynamic itself versus like the individuals and, for lack of a better term, all the baggage that we bring into our relationships?
I think it's both. I think you're working individually. When I work with couples, sometimes we're doing individual work. You're
Yeah.
doing it in front of their person. So they're seeing it and they're seeing how far they have to stretch inside and why. When you walked across the room and you didn't look at me, I felt alone.
Yeah.
And all you did was walk across the room and you looked at me and I felt alone. Okay, why did I feel alone? Well, it's this thing. And then maybe we go into like, it's like, because my mom never said good morning, or it's because my dad was working all the time, or whatever it is, right? You kind of land on
Yeah.
something. And when that happened, boy, oh, there's little kid parts of us that just didn't get something kind of met there. And
Yeah.
if you can land on that, then it's even deeper and you're the person sitting right there watching them kind of land on that. And
Mhm.
then sometimes you can get even deeper and you're like, what is it that you needed? What did this little part of you need? And boy, in those moments too, it's like, I needed to be seen, or I needed to have someone be curious about me, or I needed to feel like I was like wanted. That's what's
Yeah.
going on when you walked across the room and didn't look at me. Meanwhile, the other person's like, I was just getting some water, like they're just doing
Yeah.
their own thing. They have no idea. But if they can sit there and hold that from their partner, and in couples therapy, you sit there and go, you're not alone in going to this like deeper spot. I'm right here with you. And when we're right there together, then they can kind of come up and they can like turn to their person and they can kind of share some of what we just found. And if their person can sit there and be like, I got you, I can hold this. Because again, I'm
Hmm.
working there, or to help you see how to hold and be there, or give you some skills if you need, or maybe we're just sitting in it together. Then everything feels a little safer.
Yeah.
And then the next time you walk across the room and you don't look at me, Are you going to handle it a little differently? Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Probably it'll be there. But of course, it won't be that example. It'll be something
Yeah.
else. So, yeah, it's so complicated. And that's why
Yeah.
divorce is complicated. And it's from that space, which I totally understand. Yeah, I've gone through a divorce myself, and I really do understand it. I do, from how relationships unfold and all the
Yeah.
growth and potential and unmet potential.
Yeah. When clients are coming into your office for the first time, what is the typical impetus that brings them to someone like you?
Oh, it's so many things. Sometimes people are coming in preventatively. Oh,
Yeah.
we want to move in together or get married, and
Yeah.
we're working on that, and that's beautiful work. Sometimes they're coming in because there was a breach of trust. Sometimes they're coming in because they keep having the same argument. You don't
Mm-hmm.
know why. I've worked with couples that are wanting to open up their relationship and get on the same page with that. I've worked with
Mm-hmm.
couples who are kind of learning how to be adults with each other, and they've got to
Mm,
come in, they're really being kids with each other, and they're trying to figure that out.
yeah.
I've worked with some who've been in other relationships and they just don't want it to go the way that the other relationships went. So we're
Yeah.
working on that. It's cool because it does feel like there's like three scientists in the room, and we're all like, okay, like getting on our like goggles and like, what's off in the mix here? And what are you guys kind of
Yeah.
repeating that you don't want to be repeating? And usually it's person A does this, person B reacts, person A then reacts to the reaction and you can kind of take things back down to the seed and work with people and work on their kid parts and work
Yeah.
on being able to kind of accept and be with another person and flow with them and find more
Hmm.
reciprocity, especially when it's scary.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so for the couples that end up being, for lack of a better term, successful, right? Like they work with you, they're able to work through some of those challenges and they stay together and they stay in relationship and rebuild from there. What are the kind of qualities or characteristics that allow them to be successful?
Such an interesting question. I mean, and success is such a, I know you're like, for lack of a better term, because like, who knows?
Yeah, and
It's
like, and I don't necessarily want to define staying together in the marriage as success and divorce as failure, but
totally.
meaning in the sense of like, if they work through issues and at the end they're like, wow, like we feel stronger as a couple, like we made it through this and we are better for having done this experience.
Mhm.
I'm curious, like, what those couples typically look and feel like that have allowed this to be a successful tool for them.
Yeah, yeah. It's like what you start to see once you help people kind of find this negative cycle that's happening between them
Hmm.
is when they start to kind of have a little agency and like, oh yeah, I see that we're like doing that again. And
Mm,
then in session, we start to hold a little bit more space for when people go into those like child parts.
hmm.
What you start to see is just like shoulders are more relaxed. They can turn to each other easily. What I end up
Mm.
seeing on my end is instead of them telling me what's going on, they start turning and telling each other more.
Oh,
It's more of a
interesting.
natural thing. And there, maybe someone gets their arm around the other, and for some reason I'm thinking I also work with people around sexual issues because sometimes that's a really tiny window into all of this. You see it in the bedroom, but it's like all these other things. And so there's some things that they'll come in with. And that might be the mark that we're checking on, like for sexual issues. Okay, you guys aren't, someone's maybe not initiating, or you're off on how often each of you wants. So we have that in front of us as a marker.
Hmm.
And then as we start to do some of this work, and the shoulders relax, and the
Hmm.
arm goes out, and the little touches happen, and the little looks, all of that, it's certainly with sexual things, you start to see like, oh, there's more intimacy being built here. And if we return back to where the sexual issues maybe were, oftentimes there's way more foundation under it. And it's like way more fire and like good stuff. And
Yeah.
they start coming in. Well, we had a lot of fun last night, or oh, and there's exercises and things you can kind of do.
It's funny to hear I wasn't necessarily expecting it, but what you're saying are almost like the physical presence of people in terms of they're facing towards each other, the way that their voices are, the physical touch that they might have in the meeting was sort of a different response than what I was anticipating, but it's super interesting. I'm curious on the flip side for people that come into your office where maybe therapy is not as useful or doesn't get them to their desired outcome, whatever it is, what do you typically see there? And the reason I ask partially behind that is a friend told me one time that she and her ex-spouse ended things and they were in therapy, but she said, I don't think my partner ever really wanted it to work. I think she was using therapy as an off-ramp to help kind of soften the blow so that it felt better to me. And I was like, wow, like that really resonates. So it feels like for couples therapy to really work, like both people have to really want to give it a solid try. And so I'm just curious, like, do you see people coming into your office where it's like, this didn't even really have much of a chance to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for couples therapy to really work, I think it is working when people come in and they decide to break up. That is working because it means it was kind of stuck and you needed to come and bring some consciousness in and some awareness there. And absolutely, sometimes people are like, this is an off ramp and this is something that's there, but then it's being done in a conscious way. You're able to see. And again, I think agency is everything. And sometimes in a relationship dynamic, we don't even know we got it. We're kind of stuck trying to hold on or get or push away. And you can choose to be in this or not. And if one individual isn't choosing it, would the other person want to really keep trying on that? I mean, there's a freedom in that as well. And in finding that, I think can be golden, truly.
When you see couples sort of make that call to end marriage, right? What's that process like for you to be sitting on the other side of that and to be seeing this couple make that decision?
I think it can also be really beautiful. Again, it's people claiming their life. You get this life. You're alive right now. You get this minute. You get this time. I'm sitting here with you right now. I'm sitting there with them right then. And so it really isn't a space of failure. It's a space of having been brave and shown up and rolled your sleeves up. And sometimes couples come in to break up. And that is just the truth. And I can't get enough of couples turning to each other and like choosing each other and growing and all of that good ooey gooey stuff. But like, that doesn't mean that's always the case because there is love out there that might meet some of your needs in a way that you don't even know yet. And I do think there's something to be said about like, thank you so much for all of the lessons. Thank you for growing my heart. You have expanded me and we have gone through so much. And maybe there's been children or maybe even grandchildren or to whatever extent. And all of the gratitude inside of that is so important because it kind of lets you go of this dream you had and how people are hooked into that in different ways.
Is that related to the grief point you were mentioning before and just like grieving the end of a marriage?
Yeah, grief. I get really passionate about grief because sometimes people go through a divorce and they don't spend the time to grieve. And because it's painful. I mean, why would you? And it can kind of hold you in it in a way. And the grief is so interesting. And it's different versus a death. With a death, someone you loved is gone. And maybe you find this internal version of them. You can talk to them still, maybe in nature. Sometimes people find like, what's the hummingbird or it's the rainbow. But with divorce, you don't want that. You don't want the hummingbird. You don't want this version of the person. It's not like that. You may have like of what was and the gratitude for maybe what was and may hang there, but like you kind of want that attachment gone, right? And so it's a little bit more of a process of like pulling back what you kind of gave to them and finding ways to give it to yourself again. And that's where you're finding meaning. Yeah.
And so I imagine the 7 stages of grief or whatever the number of stages are, it's not a linear process. And I also imagine that the goal isn't speed, right? It's not like, how can I get through it as fast as possible? But for someone that's going through that healing journey, what tends to support them through that process?
Good friends, family, relationships that feel safe where you can be vulnerable. Oh, if journaling is your thing, that's fantastic. If finding a good playlist where you can cry is your thing, that's fantastic. A lot of times you need space around you so that if like the cold water of grief comes, it's okay for you to go there.
Yeah.
And I mean, grief is like, you gotta grieve. Like there's no way to do it other than to feel it. And it is like jumping into a cold pool, and you gotta get to the other side. And when you get out, there's probably not a towel there, but you will dry off. And so you know it. When it comes, it's like, ooh, but if you can let yourself go, if you know that's going to be the process, then you get a lot quicker at jumping in that cold pool. You know it when it's coming, you give yourself that space. I think therapy can help. There's coaches, there's ways, and there's so many resources out there. But
Yeah.
I think a lot of times relationally, it's helpful. And then internally, what you're doing for your own relationship with yourself. Mm-hmm.
As you think about listeners who might be in that phase of really like in that couples therapy moment, working through it, what do you hope they take with them into couples therapy, or what might support them as they're figuring out what the right path is for their marriage?
I think being honest, finding where there's safety to really be honest is only going to help open everything up. So whatever you need, I think for that is important. Sometimes there's not safety. That makes sense too. Then that's good to be honest about, even if it's between you and you. I think knowing what your values are, seeing if there are similar values is important. I think knowing what your long-term goals are is also like really, really important inside of all of this. And seeing if the other person's like willing, there's an element of willingness, but there's also an element of capacity.
Well, any parting words for our listeners today as we wrap up today's conversation?
If you're going through like a divorce right now, I think making space to grieve is really important, and acknowledging that like sometimes grieving can come out where you're in this victim space, like, woe is me. And sometimes grieving can come out where you're in this space where you're like, screw them. That is normal. And I think letting yourself move through all of that is wonderful. And I think somatic work can help with that. Taking care of yourself, going back to like Maslow's hierarchy, basic needs, like just do your basics, get your sleep, get your food, get your exercise, get your basics done. You're meeting yourself every day as you're walking through it, and realizing at a certain point, you may not need the narrative. You may be able to move on from this happened to me into who you are and what you want out of life. And that is a process. I don't think that choosing a life that feels authentic to you, that doesn't maybe include the person you are with, is wrong, you know? And sometimes if someone's not choosing you, then you have to think about that too, in terms of like your own worth and little kid and what you want. Yeah. Because we all deserve to be chosen. We all deserve to choose ourselves. It's really important. Yeah.
What a beautiful parting sentiment to leave us with. So, well, thank you so much for being with us today, Shelly. If people are interested in working with you or connecting with you, where can they find you?
Yeah. So I actually do coaching outside of California. I have a couple clients that way, but otherwise I work as a therapist in California, and my website is shellystover.com. And my email is therapywithshelly@gmail.com. So you feel free to reach out, and I would look forward to, talking through this with anybody. And don't be scared and having like the shame of it. And people are here. Resources are there. People who've gone through it and walked through the fire are there too. Yeah, that's why it's wonderful that you have this, that you have going for people to access as well.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you for the work that you do. It's been wonderful to have you on today.
Thanks, Allison. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for listening to The Details with Allison Kahler. If this episode resonated with you, be sure to follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And please consider sharing it with someone who might benefit from it. New episodes drop every Tuesday.